Hi, and welcome to Excel for Chapter 5. We're going to be talking about calculations for the modern portfolio concepts. And we're going to start out with individual portfolio returns and standard deviations. First, we're going to calculate portfolio return. So to do that, we're going to look at Netflix and Amazon in the portfolio. So there's only two stocks in this portfolio, and we have two different weights. Netflix is 45% of the portfolio, Amazon is 55%. So to calculate this, I'm going to start with an equals to let them know it's a formula. Then I'm going to say parentheses, Amazon return times, Netflix return times Netflix weight, close parentheses, plus, open parentheses, Amazon's return times Amazon's weight, close parentheses. So that gives us the portfolio return, which is, a weighted average for each of the two stocks in the portfolio. So if this was a bigger portfolio, you would just keep adding to this formula for every stock until you have all the stocks listed for each year. And that's how you create a portfolio return. And I'm just going to pull this down and easily calculate the returns for the remaining years. Now to calculate the average, I'm going to hit equals again and start typing in average until I see the average function. And I'm going to highlight all of the returns in close parentheses, and I create an average for my Netflix return. And I could just pull this across to create an average for Amazon, and then you see the average here, of course, is going to be 45, and of course, it's going to be 55, and the average return for the portfolio. So let's calculate the standard deviation for Netflix. I'm going to hit equals, I'm going to start typing in standard, and I use standard deviation S, and I'm going to highlight all the returns, and hit enter, and I get my deviation. And I'm going to pull this over for Amazon, and I can either copy this or I can do another formula here. So instead of copying it, I'm just going to type in, find the function, highlight the first range. There's only one range here, and hit enter. So I get my standard deviation for the portfolio. Correlation coefficient, we want to see what is the correlation between Netflix and Amazon here. So I'm going to do equals, and I'm going to start typing in correlate. I get correl, this is the function, and I'm going to highlight, in my first array, array 1, I'm going to highlight Netflix. And then I'm going to hit comma and do array 2, and array 2 is going to be Amazon. And close parentheses. And now this is my correlation coefficient, and they have a positive correlation. So they move relatively in similar directions. So for most years, if one stock goes up, the other stock goes up. If one stock goes down, the other stock goes down. And there's only 2 years here, I think, where the opposite is true. So it's not too close to 1, but there's still a positive correlation. So let's move into portfolio average returns and standard deviations. Okay, so here we have Netflix and we have Amazon. And this is the average return for the two. And down here, I just copied from the cells above the average return for each stock and the standard deviation for each stock, plus the correlation coefficient. So we calculated all this already up here, so I'm just bringing it down here. Now to calculate the standard, the weight, so here's the weights. And I could, you could also display these as a percentage if you wanted to. So I'll just select percentage. So here in a portfolio that's 100% Netflix, that's a 10% portfolio return. In a portfolio that's 90% Netflix, 10% Amazon, that's a 12% return. So the highest return is when you have 100% Amazon and you get a return of 37. So this is just the portfolio returns based on the averages for this time period. And these numbers are important because when we want to calculate the portfolio standard deviation, the formula is a little bit more complex. So if you look at this formula here, move over a little bit more. This is the formula, and this is straight out of the textbook. So here's the formula where I take the square root of the variables that are laid out in this. If you follow this formula, all these variables are already laid out in this spreadsheet, and the formula is also up here. This is how I wrote it out. It's a little lengthy, so I'm not going to write it out in this video, but it's also included in the spreadsheet. So you don't have to actually calculate it out yourself, but this is taken straight from the textbook. And you see the textbook example here's an example in the textbook. And this is different, two different stocks, and it's going to show you to it's going to give you that formula down here is the formula for portfolio returns and standard deviation. So the textbook has this already mapped out with the calculations. I put them in I put some sample tables in the spreadsheet if you want to look at that. But that's basically how this is calculated. And I just pulled this formula down. Once I just only had to do it once, and I pulled it down. And that's how we could calculate the portfolio standard deviations based on different mixes. And the reason for doing this is, you want to see which portfolio has the highest risk. And with the highest risk would be 100% Amazon. Okay. Now down here we're going to look at expected returns and standard deviations for assets A, B, and C. So we're going to construct two portfolios, portfolio that's going to be stock AB and portfolio that's going to be AC. And we're going to compare the two. So the question really is, what's a better portfolio if I combine AB together or AC? So we could look at, we're going to calculate again what's in the yellow boxes. Okay, so let me just delete that. I had forgot to start the video again. I went through a few minutes of it before realizing the video wasn't running. So let me do it again here while the video is recording. We're going to calculate the average. So we just type in AV, we'll get the average function. We just pull that down and close parentheses, and we get the average return. And the standard deviation, we're going to say equals, start typing in standard deviation. I use standard deviation S because this is a sample set, considered a sample set. And I'm going to close that. And now that I have the expected returns and standard deviation, I'm going to pull that across. And we see that the average returns are 11, 17, and 17. So B and C have the same expected returns, but their standard deviation is much higher for stock C. A and B have the same standard deviation, while stock C has a higher standard deviation, means it's riskier. So let's look at calculating the returns for each portfolio. So let's do the AB portfolio. So here again, we're going to start with open parentheses, and we're going to calculate stock A. So we take the return for stock A, and we're going to multiply that by the weight for stock A, which is 66.7%. Close parentheses, and we're going to add that to open parentheses the stock B times the return for stock B, the weight for stock B rather, and then we have our 11% return. Now for stock AC, we do the same sort of pattern here. Open parentheses, I'm going to do stock A times stock A weight, close parentheses, plus stock C times stock C's weight, close parentheses. So we get 4.36. Now I can just take these and pull them down to calculate all of the returns for the two portfolios, and then I could calculate the average for each of these. So again, put my average formula in, highlight, close parentheses, oops, I already did that for me. Okay, so we got a 13% here. And you could also, if I have average calculated over here, I can still copy this and paste it here, and you'll see that. So there's a couple ways of getting this formula. You can also just take this and just, if this was empty, you take this, of course, and just drag it over. So we got the same return for portfolio AB and portfolio AC. So now we want to calculate the standard deviations for both portfolios. And again, I could just copy this and paste it here, or I can just, of course, type in the standard deviation formula and whatever you feel more comfortable with. Close parentheses. And I can also just pull this across. So we see here that portfolio AC has a riskier standard deviation for portfolio AB. And AB, of course, is going to, since A and B both have the same standard deviation, the combination is really not going to eliminate any risk. But AC combined together will pull down the risk of just of what stock C's standard deviation is. Okay. So the moral of the story is what portfolio should you do? You should do AB because it has the same average return as AC with a lot less risk. Okay. So let's move over to portfolio concepts. So here are some concepts from the textbook that we're going to calculate. Let me make this bigger so you can see this. So this is, we're going to complete the yellow boxes. So the first thing is we want to calculate the capital asset pricing model. Now there isn't a, I don't think there's a function for this. No, there's no function for this. So we're going to have to do this by calculating the formula. So the variables here are actually spelled out, and I put them in order of the formula. So you see risk-free rate listed twice. It's the same variable, so it's always going to have the same amount. But it's just listed that way so I can ease of creating the formula. So I'm going to say equals the risk-free rate, and we're going to add that to beta multiplied by, open parentheses, the market return minus, you see that's why I have the risk-free rate listed twice, close parentheses, close the second parentheses. So the number of parentheses we have on the left, we should have the same number on the right. So we hit enter. And this would be the actual required rate of return, sometimes known as K. And so this would be using the capital asset pricing model, and I can just pull that across to calculate all three. Okay. Now let's move down, and we're going to look at portfolio return. So these are similar concepts we did before, but here we're going to do it with a little bit different scale. So here we have our 4 stocks together. You see this little down here in this bar, it's going to give me the average, the count, and the sum. See how that matches? So this is the total portfolio is $20,000. So to calculate the investment percentage, I'm going to say equals stock A divided by total portfolio. Now I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the B and a dollar sign in front of the 16 to lock down this cell. So I can just copy this down and get my percentages. Together, it's 100%. All 4 of these stocks are going to be 100%. And the return here, here's the return for each of the stocks. So the portfolio return, this is the same formula that we used in the previous spreadsheet. We're going to take for each of these stocks, we're going to take the investment percentage, and we're going to multiply that by the return, close parentheses, and then we're going to do the second one. Open parentheses. So for each stock, and this is what I was saying before, if you have more stocks in a portfolio, you're going to keep doing this formula for each stock. And to our last one, and this will give us the portfolio return for a 4-stock portfolio. So you see I have all 4 stocks listed. I'm adding their returns together based on their weight. And now you see if you have these hashtags here, what we have here is a formula that's the return is too big of a number. So I'm going to go and just put in percentage, and I'm going to open that just to two percentage positions. So you see it rounds it to just the 13%, but it's really 12.89 if I open it up 2 positions. Okay. So now here's the second problem. So we get to do it twice. So again, I'm going to take the stock A's investment and divide by the total portfolio. Now I can't just copy this down. It's going to come out all weird because I need to lock down the total investment portfolio so it doesn't drift with the formula. And these dollar signs create an absolute position. So I can pull these down. Okay. Now to calculate the portfolio return, I'm going to do the same thing I did up here. In fact, I could easily just copy this formula and move it down so I don't have to redo it. And then I get 11%. And it drifts the numbers down with the rows that I moved it down. So since these are the same 4 stocks in one portfolio, I can easily just reuse that formula. Now here's beta, new stock price. So we're saying that this is the beta, this is the stock price, and let's move that into, put that into a currency, a currency format. Okay, so we're going to put that in the currency format, but I don't like that we have this guided format here. I'm just going to just open up what I'm going to do here. Move up here, and I'm going to select. When I select this group, I want the currency indicator. And you see how that is. Move this down again. See how that is much more clean. So that's a nice way of doing it. So let me just recenter this. It's a little cleaner. Okay, so you can see everything. All right. So now let's look at how we're going to calculate the new stock price. So we have the beta, the current stock price, and the market return. So the new stock price is sort of like a forecast of the stock price. If the market goes up 10%, what would be the new stock price based on this beta? So what we're going to do is we're going to start the formula with a equals, and then we're going to say D26. No, we don't want D26. We want, we'll start with C26, and we're going to multiply that by the stock price, and then we're going to multiply that by the beta, and then we're going to add the stock price to that. And let's see what we get. Right. So this is $30. So what we did is basically we said that if the stock market goes up 10%, this stock's going to go up 22.5% basically. So I took the base, so with this formula, I'm just escalating the stock price. So it's sort of the stock price times market return times beta added to the base stock price, and we get what the new stock price would be in this situation. So this is a way of forecasting the new stock price based on a change in beta. Okay, so let's move lower and let's look at calculating what is the portfolio beta. So here we're calculating, we know the beta for each stock, but we want to figure out in this portfolio, what would be the portfolio beta. So here we don't want the return, that's a mistake. We want beta. So fix that on the spreadsheet if I haven't already fixed that. We want the portfolio beta. Okay, so again, we have to do the same thing where we need a percentage of the investment. So we're going to say equals the stock divided by the total portfolio, and we're going to put our absolutes in. Now, I'm just putting the $sign. You could do F4 actually does that automatically too. Well, here we get our percentages, and you see they equal 100%. And now to create the beta portfolio, or the beta or weighted beta for the portfolio, we use that similar formula that you're used to, where we take the percentage times the beta, close parentheses, plus percentage times beta, plus, oops, get my parentheses, plus the last set, what was that? Okay, so I had missing a parentheses, which Excel let me know you're missing a parentheses, so that's nice. And then once I have that parentheses put in, so Excel helps you along the way and gives you this color coding to see how things are being lined up. I hit enter, and here is my portfolio weighted portfolio beta. Now this is another way of doing that might be easier, is you could say here in column E, if this might be easier, and I'm just going to say equals investment times beta. And then I can just copy this down. And then here I can find the sum equals sum. And I'll do my sum and just highlight these, close parentheses, and I get the same answer. So that's just two ways of doing it. Okay, so those are all the concepts, Excel concepts from Chapter 5 that we're going to go over. The textbook has a lot of these examples written out that you could look at, and I hope you found this video useful. Take care.